2021 regular school board meeting for the Stevens Point Area Public School District to order. I will note that due to the public health emergency and the need to limit gatherings, we are strongly encouraging members of the public to attend school board meetings remotely, and there is information on the website with respect to how to access the meeting remotely. The first item is our roll call and verification of quorum.
Mr. Pope.
All right, here.
Mr. Ebel.
Here.
Ms. Va.
Here.
Ms. Portson.
Here.
Ms. Rano.
Here.
Ms. Scott.
Here.
Mr. Wade.
Present.
Ms. Erler.
Here.
Okay, we have a quorum.
Thank you. We will move to item 3, which is our Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Moving into item 4, which are public comments. At the March 19th, 2020 special school board meeting, the Stevens Point Area Public School District passed a motion to suspend school board policy 0167.3 public participation at board meetings for the duration of the public health crisis. Members of the public may provide public comment pertaining only to specific items on the agenda via email at comments@pointschools.net. Carlin has provided one public comment to me. Are there any other that were received?
Just the one.
Okay, so I will, do you want to just step back there, Trish, that'd be great. So I will read the public comment. So the introduction is, hello, my name is Steve Johnson. My address is 1816 Ellis Street in Stevens Point. The agenda item that I want to comment on is the presentation from Craig Gerlach. Items 3, operational status overview, and item 4, learning model update. Steve also noted that the 50-word limit on comments was challenging, and that even if it was at 100 words, it would make the context of his comments better, which is something that we will take into consideration. I will read his comments. Outcomes need to be shared on the efficacy of e-learning, not just COVID. The impact of e-learning on mental health of students is compromising high-quality learning from any teacher. Use the secondary gymnasiums and field house or rented corporate tents to get secondary students to 4 days a week. So that was the comment received. There is no one here this evening that present to make a public comment, so we will move into item 5, which are presentations. We received notice today from Principal John Vollendorf that unfortunately Alexis is sick, and so is not present here this evening for her student report, so we will not have a student report tonight. Moving into item B, our communication report, Sarah O'Donnell.
Hi, thank you. The communication dashboard is included in your board packet. We saw a slight decrease in social channel impressions, engagements, and clicks on all channels except for Instagram, where we did see an increase in engagements and an uptick in followers as that channel continues to grow. Typically in the month of January, we'd be preparing for our annual art show and open house at Bliss, which I know is a big favorite for staff here, getting that art on the walls and really feeling more connected to schools. Unfortunately, though, we won't be able to host that this year. We are working on putting together a virtual art show with teachers, planning for that to take place in the spring. So really excited to still find ways to showcase art, even though we won't be able to do that all together. In the meantime, art that was selected for the calendar, the district calendar that was not printed this year, is being featured on the district web page and social channels. So I certainly encourage you to take a look at that if you have a moment. And then as we move through January, we'll begin to prepare for third quarter. Current communication practices around COVID-19 are going to be kind of inventoried and just reviewed. We made some decisions about how we would communicate and what, when, and what that we think may not make sense as we move forward. So we'll be taking a look at that, and then any decisions made there will obviously be communicated ahead of that change. And then finally, just a friendly reminder that grab-and-go meals will be available through the remainder of the year. You know, there was a little bit of, we had some questions from families about whether or not those would continue. They will continue through the end of the year. Sites, times, and locations are available on the district website. And that's it for me.
Do any board members have questions of Sarah? All right, thanks, Sarah. We'll move into item C, which is our superintendent's report. Craig Gerlach.
Good evening, everyone. First, I'd like to acknowledge Trish Baker, who is with us tonight. Trish has resigned from the school district as she has accepted an appointment to the Portage County Circuit Court. So congratulations, Trish. I know that it's just so exciting for you. It's something that's been a lifelong dream. And it came to fruition, so congratulations. I want to thank you for you were on the board when I was hired 5 years ago, and I want to thank you for your leadership and dedication to our school district, and greatly appreciate the opportunity to work with you over the past 5 years, and want to say good luck to you as you
Thank you.
continue to move forward. If
I'm good. Yeah, can
if
I
your
say?
honor, if you would like to say a few words, please do so.
I would. I'm going to remove this. I know that it's allowed to speak, and I think we're all at least 6 feet apart. Serving on the school board has been just one of the greatest pleasures that I have participated in. I haven't talked to this group about my work as a defense attorney, as a private attorney, doing all of the things representing juveniles. I think maybe there was one time where it crossed over and I had to leave a meeting that we had because I knew a little bit too much about a particular young person. But I want to reiterate a couple of the comments that you had a picture up there from my investiture last week, and I just want to reiterate a couple of comments about my feelings on education and the criminal justice system. You know, when we put somebody in prison, we spend, as taxpayers, $60,000 to $80,000, $90,000 a year to incarcerate that person. We don't spend anywhere near that much to educate them. And I have always said education is an ounce of prevention, and incarceration or the criminal justice system is like a pound of cure. And I guess what I want to leave you folks with, because I think that the work that our educators do, that our administrators do, and that our board does is so incredibly important to the health of a community. And I feel really, I got to tell you, I'm really sad leaving the board. This is really hard for me. I have so appreciated being on the board, and I've so appreciated representing and being sort of the conduit to our community members, to the administration. And you know, I've always loved getting those emails that there's a problem with this or a problem with that, and I know right who to send that email to get a resolution. I do not, as board members, ever underestimate the value of what you do for our community, because you are the citizens' voice on our very, very expensive education project for our you got the biggest budget of any municipality or any government institution in the county. And you folks are the accountability piece. And I just can't emphasize enough how important the role is. That's how I felt as a board member, and I have to tell you, I'm really sad leaving the board. I might start crying. You know, I guess the last thing I'll leave you with is something that I've been advocating for and has to do with the pandemic. I think that when I look at the different districts now going into what I'm hoping is the last phase of COVID, I've been so proud of how our district has handled it because we were prepared. And I heard this morning that there were a number of different districts in the state that were not able to go to online learning because they were not prepared. We were prepared. We were totally prepared. And part of that has to do with, thanks to Century for being such financial supporters of education. But part of it was just the foresight of our great administration. So, but as we get into this last part of COVID, I just encourage you folks to continue moving towards in-person education. I hate to see our students lose any more time. You've already heard me harp on that for about the last 4 months or so, but so I won't say anything more other than I hope that you do move towards that. Anyway, that's it. Just remember how important this role is, and we have such a wonderful district and such a wonderful administration. And yeah, I was on the team to hire you, and that was really cool back when we had Lee Bush was our interim superintendent, and how well it's turned out. It's just turned out to be so great with the referendum, foresight, planning. I'm so proud of our district. If there is ever a time when you guys are going to put a plaque up on SPASH that, has the name of the board members that helped make the referendum possible, you better give me a call, man. I want to be at that grand opening. I'm really sorry that we haven't had grand openings for all of the improvements and maintenance that we've done in the building. So with that, I'm bringing back my original, from 2014, my original book that had, when we did our orientation. And here's my computer, and I'll take it and drop it off at Carlin's desk. And I'll leave you guys and hope that you find somebody wonderful to replace me. You know what, I'll just make one last comment. I didn't announce this at the last meeting because Craig and I were still talking about what day would be my last day. And then there was a question about whether there might be a special meeting, and I didn't want to miss anything if that was a possibility. So I put in and then I will confess with December got kind of crazy for me, and I actually got my resignation in a little too late, and I apologize for that. I meant to get it in about a week earlier. But anyway, thank you to the citizens for giving me the opportunity to serve on the board for 7 years. And thank you to you guys for continuing the great work. So hope you fill my spot with somebody really meaningful, somebody really committed and feels as strongly about it.
You don't have anyone yet? I told you can't get off the board
I'm
until you find a
sorry.
replacement.
I'm sorry. I got a couple ideas, man.
So we have a certificate of recognition that is being bestowed on behalf of the board and the district to Patricia Baker, school board member 2014 to 2020, in appreciation of your service to the Stevens Point Area Public School District and the education of students. We also have, as we have with other board members, a few personal gifts from school board members. And the one that we've been giving is individual board members to board members leaving. The most important one is the SPASH blanket. So
Excellent. Thank
and
you.
we're also providing some caramel corn because tradition in December has been that Jeff would bring us caramel corn at our
I
December school
missed
board meeting.
caramel
And he
corn.
didn't bring it this
And it
year,
didn't happen.
Trish was not happy about that.
That's true.
Anyway,
Oh my gosh, you guys are
congratulations
fabulous.
and best wishes.
Oh, thank you. Oh my gosh, you guys are gonna make me cry. Thank you. I'll put this up for the camera so you can see that. Oh my gosh, you guys are fabulous. Thank you. I wish you the best of luck. And then, like I said in my resignation letter, when you need me for a non-elected position, any committee or something, please don't hesitate to give me a ring and we'll see if it works out. I'm on to something big and meaningful. And I'm really grateful for that position. But I just feel really strongly about this board and what you guys have done and how far it's come in 7 years. How far it's come in 7 years. Really very, very proud of this board. So thank you. Oh my gosh. Thanks for the caramel corn chip.
Congrats. Good luck.
Thank you. Going to leave you, and I'm going to go put this, my computer and book in Carlin's office.
If I ever have to step in front of you now, be lenient on me, please.
Really?
I'm recusing myself, I got to tell you
No
that.
recusing.
Anyway, thanks so much, guys. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay, moving on. We will be having an appointment for Tricia's position.
And we're going to be talking
We'll be
about
talking
that
about that
during
later in the
the,
agenda.
yeah, later in the meeting.
We have 6 candidates that will be on the ballot for this spring board election. Incumbents, Meg Erler, Mike Wade, Judy Rano, and 2 others that have been on the ballot, actually have been board members in the past, Bob Larson and Ed Morganroth, and a newcomer, if I may, W. Alexander Summers. So there'll be 6 people vying for 3 positions this spring. Operation status update. Sarah, you have your model, your colored model. Do you have any comments on that?
Only that as of, at the time we put this together, we have moved everything out of red. So I don't know that clearly we're not anywhere near back to normal. But I do think it's a good indication that the very hard work that was done during the break to really try to put together, kind of go back and redo some of the e-learning component that was put together at the beginning of the school year. We do think, even though clearly it's very early into that process, that has relieved some of that pressure that we were really feeling earlier in the school year, kind of mid-fall.
Any questions for Sarah? Thank you, Sarah. COVID-19 data and case rates. I'm going to turn that over to Corey.
Yep, currently we have 8 positive students, 76 students who are quarantined. We have 3 positive staff members and 14 staff members that are quarantined. As far as case rate information, we are at 39 cases per 100,000 residents within the district. Portage County is at 37 and the state is at 46. So this is the first time that the district is above Portage County. However, it's significantly lower than what we were at, beginning of November.
So Corey, I know we've gotten some questions from members of the public because some of the reports that are going out are noticing that students that were in the building back, like, for example, November 20th, prior to the break, we're now notifying the public about that. So can you talk a little bit about why we've got some dates that are back November 20th, and then we've got some dates that clearly are within the last few days?
Absolutely. So we have some students that the county has been notifying us during that 3.5 week of e-learning in December. And families are notifying us when their children test positive. Now, the reason why the notification goes all the way back to November 20th or November 17th is because that was the last time that they were actually in our buildings, because we took that 3.5 week time period off. If they're a secondary student, it might go back to the 17th or the 16th of November, because they may be a student that is in that particular cohort that only comes on a Monday or a Tuesday. We also had special ed students, and we had some athletes that might have been in our buildings during the month of December. So we were getting a couple questions, how could you have had someone that tested positive on December 7th. Well, it could have been one of our high needs, special needs students that was in the building. So once we clarify those questions, people generally have a better understanding of what's actually happening. But tomorrow at Cabinet, we're gonna spend some time talking about, does it make sense to continue to communicate in the same way? We've had lots of families saying, can I please just opt out of these notifications? We're digging into some research to see how many people are actually opening those emails when they go out. And we're finding that people are not even reading them anymore, so they're really not serving a good purpose and may not be our best way to communicate. So we'll discuss, should we make a switch come third quarter? And if we do, we'll make sure that we give parents a lot of notification before making that change.
The data that you reported for the district, so many cases per 100,000, is there any requirement to send that to the state, or does DPI require that you provide that information to them, or is that just for
It's just for us.
our benefit?
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
And we decided and disclosed early on that we would be completely transparent and give all information regarding cases. Well, we're finding that sometimes the information that we get, especially coming into Thanksgiving, the county was really behind because of the numbers, and now we're getting information that might be a little old, and we still are putting all that out because we said we would.
Yeah.
But then again, we've got some people saying, it's just not relevant when we get it. Does that make sense? So there may be more on that. Okay, learning model update. We're back in session. As of last week, things are going well. I guess I'll turn that off over to Corey as well for any specifics or questions that you as a board may have.
So elementary shifted January 4th to the new model. We've had 1 week and 1 day, under our belts, and it was actually a really good week. Things went quite well, very few issues, but the ones that we did have, we worked through. The biggest problem is probably the drop-off and pickup of materials, organizing 9 buildings. So we've had to use Bliss as a hub and the staff here to help distribute all of that, to go back to the buildings, and then families pick up materials on Fridays and then return materials back to the teachers on Fridays. We have 172 more students that are in person than we had first quarter, so that's a really good sign. And our average class size for our e-learning classes is about 54, so that's gone down a little bit. So we'll continue to monitor, see how things are going, but all in all, I would say the first week went well. Secondary returned after the holiday break in their blended cohort model. They won't make their shift to the new instructional model until January 25th.
Okay, I'm just going to refer briefly to Steve Johnson's comments. I share Steve's interest, as along with many others you heard Trish today say as well. A great interest to get our students, our secondary students, now back to school for a greater period of time or extended days. We've got to buy some more time. There was an article today. Each and every day, there's articles regarding what schools are doing, and schools are still shifting in and out. We still have schools that are going completely to virtual and some that are going back to the blended model. We still have schools, they tend to be your larger school districts that haven't been in person in a blended model yet. There was a school district, and I don't need to cite the name, but it's a larger school district. The board just passed a motion that they are going to go back to school full-time in the high school. And there was a comment from the principal saying, well, we aren't able to social distance, but we'll just have to figure that out. Well, if we're going to go back at the secondary 4 days a week, we're going to bring in at SPASH 750 additional students. And I don't want to say, well, we'll figure it out after a decision's been made to go. Now, we may have to say, or if in terms of being transparent, let's be flat out honest. We can get our kids back in, but we cannot socially distance. Let's be transparent about that. So before we get to that particular point, in time, we just need to learn more. I think we're maximizing our facilities as well as we can. Our gymnasium, we do have Phi Ed classes. We could suspend Phi Ed, which I'm not convinced is a great idea right now. But still, we're limited to the number of, we can't put 750 kids in our field house and think we're going to be okay. So we're going to continue to have conversations in terms of getting kids back into schools. Again, safety is our priority. I was hopeful that possibly by fourth quarter we would have full vaccination with adults. I'm not convinced that's going to happen right now. You know, we're all seeing the same things on TV in terms of the delay and whatnot. But more to come on all of this. Obviously, we're all working towards getting our kids back in school to the extent that we can safely. Gerke Field, Mike Blair, SPASH Athletic Director, and I attended virtually the committee meeting as it relates to request to have the city allow us to have up to 25% capacity at Gerke Field for the new fall, spring season, which would be cross-country and football. It would also then extend the ability to use Gerke Field for the late spring track and field season. It was about an hour discussion. It was a very good discussion. At the end, the committee voted unanimously to support us doing that. That'll go to the full council on a consent agenda. It has the ability to come off that, which it certainly may, and there certainly may be more conversation regarding that. But up till now, we've got, it's moving along to have up to 25% capacity, which for football, quite frankly, could be just the players themselves and all of the essential workers that go with that. It might include, depending on numbers and whatnot, the ability to have two tickets per household, or per parent, or if it's a split family, we would double that. And of course, all this is contingent on what COVID looks like in another 2 months. So that's the update on that. We received $1,250 from the employees of Great Lakes for Jefferson Elementary. Want to say thank you to those folks. We greatly appreciate that. And I'd also like to recognize our adult crossing guards. This is crossing guard week of the week of 11th through the 15th. So thank goodness we've had some very, very nice weather. And although we're in a blended model and 4 days a week, we still have kids going to school each and every other day. And we've got those good folks out there with their kids to get them across the street and to school safely. So thank you so much. I believe that's what I have. Are there any questions for me?
I have a question for Corey. So with the elementary level, with the pickups and drop-offs on Friday, are parents and students able to go another day if they were not able to pick it up that Friday?
Absolutely. They should just contact the school office and they'll make arrangements for parents to be able to pick them up, Ann.
So would it be recommended to give them a call first?
Yes.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions from board members? I just have one question about December. You know, clearly we were totally online learning, except we were working with a number of our special needs students as well as some high-risk students in the buildings. And I'm just wondering how that experience was for those students to be able to have that experience.
Caleb?
Yeah, the experience was fabulous. When we went out and visited the schools and saw the kids, they were extremely happy. They were engaged. Staff were excited to be there. They got more work done in those 3 weeks than they've been able to because they were able to just provide absolute attention. And it was wonderful for small groups. They were able to get outside and play. And so from 4K and preschool all the way up through our transition program, and it was a fabulous experience for students. And if by any chance that we have to go into something like that again, we'd like to be able to provide that opportunity, and we have contingency plans and all the paperwork to do that for students, because our students that are struggling the most are needing that in-person face. And honestly, except for one small program, we had most students be able to make it all the way through those 3 weeks. So it was wonderful. I'm very pleased that we were able to do it and provide that for our most needy students.
Generally speaking, kids want to be in school.
Yeah.
I was in a number of buildings last week and just it was just upbeat. I received a number of emails from parents just saying how excited their kids are to be back in school, and I think more now than ever. Kids as well as parents are seeing a greater appreciation for schools.
Thank you, Caleb.
You're welcome.
All right, we will move into our consent agenda, which is item 6. We have our minutes of our school board meeting from December 14th, 2020. We have the approval of the schedule of monthly bills, and we have employment recommendations. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So move.
Moved by Wade. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by G. Pope. Any discussion or questions? I will have Carlin call a roll due to the monthly bills.
Mr. Pope,
Yes.
Ms. Va,
Yes.
Ms. Scott,
Yes.
Ms. Portson,
Yes.
Ms. Rano,
Yes.
Mr. Ebel,
Yes.
Mr. Wade,
Yes.
Ms. Erler.
Yes,
And we have 8-0. Motion passes.
thank you. Moving into item 7, business services, I'll turn that over to Mike.
All right, thanks, Meg. 2 items under business services, a referendum progress report and our financial statements. So we'll start with 7A, a financial summary of our referendum progress. And Dr. Owens, can you cover this area for us?
Sure. As you can see on the report, we have paid to date $43,988,609. That's under Table A in the far right column. If you go down to Table B, you will note there that we have contracts to date in the amount of $62,865,366 and contract balance of $18,876,758. And we're moving along nicely. Some of the contracts are closing out. We're getting to that point now where we're closing some out and just opening up others that are just starting now. So it's moving along nicely.
Any questions for Dr. Owens? Okay, the next item is review of the financial statements. Mr. Kurtz, are you available for that?
Yeah, I'm having a little bit trouble starting my video, but I hope you can hear me.
We can hear you.
Okay. Well, the financial statements for this month are through November 30th. Remember, we're always kind of looking back. One thing that is interesting and that you can see when you're looking through the statements is that our Fund 10 balance as of November 30th was about $2.5 million. And I point this out because this is one of 2 low points that occurred during the year. The low points occur in late November to early December, and then an equalization aid payment is received in December. So this year that happened on December 7th. It was about 40% of our equalized aid, just slightly over $11 million. The second low point will occur in June, and again, that's until another equalization aid payment is received and on the 4th Monday of June. So I just like to point that out. We have these low points because we don't receive all of our revenue at one time, and we then use our fund balance to help us pay our bills from one set of aid to the next. Any questions?
So I guess I have just one broader question, which is clearly the federal government recently passed some additional support for schools. Have we heard any information from them as to whether our district will be receiving some of those funds and timing of it?
I talked with Corey. I don't know, Tom, if you or Mike, what you've heard. But we've heard that we will be getting additional dollars. And it could be considerably higher than what we received.
That's my understanding as well.
And until,
It is mine also, we have received notice from the DPI that they are currently processing that information, and they'll notify us when they're done with it.
preliminary numbers, Corey indicated that it would be up to 4 times as much.
Possibly up to.
Possibly, and you know what, that's a lot of money, so I'm hesitant to even say that, but we received $600 and some thousand, which is a lot of money.
Okay.
So, that said, we certainly can use it.
Can you give us a ballpark of possibility?
Well, 4 times 6 is 2.4 million, that's a lot of money. But until
I'll bet we could.
it's in the bank account here, I don't get too excited.
Right.
I'm sure we can find a place to use it.
All right, thank you. Okay, we will move into item 9, which our educational services. Barb, would you like to run this part of the meeting as the chair of that committee?
No, you're doing fine.
Okay, all right, okay. I know sometimes it's hard remote
It is.
versus being in person, so,
I'm having a real hard time understanding almost everybody tonight.
okay, okay.
So I don't know if I've got a bad headset or what the deal is.
Is anybody else up on the screen at home having a hard time hearing us or understanding?
I'm fine.
Can understand, it's just slow and every once in a while it'll kind of cut out.
Okay,
Okay,
thank you for letting us know that.
yep. All right. All right, so we're moving into item 9, educational services, and item A is district calendar 2020 to 2021 and calendar 2021 to 2022.
Good evening, everyone. I'll talk to these two calendars. We are presenting the 2021 district calendar revisions for second semester. Similar to this fall, we brought information to the board that we would have to, we could not safely conduct our parent-teacher conferences in the fall, so we made some changes to the calendar. We obviously made changes in December when we went to full e-learning. So we're presenting information to the board about some of those similar changes for second semester. Basically, we're canceling our February parent-teacher conferences with the expectations that teachers are communicating with parents via email or other avenues as needed. We would take the February 22nd parent-teacher conference day that was scheduled to be a non-instructional day for students and make that an instructional day. Similarly, as we were talking earlier about desiring to have our kids in school, the February 19th and April 5th, which were scheduled to be full professional development days, we will now convert to instructional days for kids because our teachers do have Wednesdays for that professional development, collaboration, and preparation. So those are changes that we're making to the 2021 district calendar for second semester. And again, in overview is making sure that we have to cancel conferences because we can't do them safely, and then to convert those PD days to instructional days and bring our kids back into the buildings. The district
Do,
calendar
hold on
for
one second,
21,
Connie, wait one second. Do any board members have, that does not require approval of the board, but do any board members have questions about those changes that Connie just noted?
I would have one question, Connie. I know our amount of instructional time has been waived during this time, but how are we with that? I mean, are we in the ballpark with what we usually have for instructional time?
Yes, if you recall, we did receive a waiver from DPI for instructional hours, but given all of our e-learning days, we're still fine. We're still meeting the benchmarks.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, go ahead, Connie.
The 2021-2022 district calendar does require board approval, so I just will quickly go through the assumptions that this calendar is based on. The assumption is that in the fall we'll be coming back 5 days a week with all of our students for K-12. The assumption is that we will be able to have our fall and spring parent-teacher conferences in person. The instructional days will meet the benchmarks easily for all grade levels. In fact, if there is a snow day where power would be disrupted and we couldn't do e-learning, we would have 3 days built in where we still could end school on the day designated in the calendar without having to extend into June. And that's positive because when we've had times where we've had to extend the calendar into June, we run into lots of difficulties with the start of summer school, and we run into a lot of difficulties with teachers who start to take summer school courses themselves. So it's nice to end the calendar in June so that parents and staff and students know, regardless of the number of snow days, we are still going to be able to end at that time. So the instructional days were fine with DPI. We're far above the benchmarks for the 21-22. And then what we are offering and recommending and requesting approval is that we've always had professional development days, and we've seen a positive having Wednesdays. While we're not going to be having Wednesdays as collaboration and preparation days in the 21-22, we are recommending to have some e-learning days built in, 2 more than we've had in the past district calendars. It won't affect our instructional time. We feel that that is important now more than ever, where teachers are going to be wanting to collaborate, looking at student work and student assessment and see what gaps that we need to fill. It's important to have collaboration time to do that. And it also keeps kids with the e-learning model and used to that model on Wednesdays as they have experienced this school year. So those are the assumptions and the proposals that we are presenting for the 21-22 district calendar.
Any questions from board members with respect to that proposed calendar?
I had a question. Connie, one of the things that you mentioned is the gradual start that we did this last year. That's going to continue. But I couldn't quite remember how that was structured, and can you describe on the calendar how that gradual start works?
Absolutely. I'm sorry I didn't mention that. The gradual start, we did that this school year because we couldn't have our orientation days in the summer for our students that were new to their buildings, specifically 4K that are entering a new building. Our kindergarten students that are entering a new building, 7th graders and 10th graders. So in an effort to make sure kids had adequate time to feel comfortable in the building, we had a gradual start for those grade levels, 4K, K, 7th and 10th, where they had the building all to themselves on the first day of school. And the other grade levels did not start until the following day. It actually turned out to be really positive. Kids had adequate time to go through their school day, to find their classrooms, to work their lockers, to figure out all the logistics of where the bus lines are and the food service and how they go gather lunch and what are the protocols and the rules for all those things. So because that was very positive, we're recommending that gradual start again for for the 21-22 school year, which means on the absolute first day of school, 4KK 7th and 10th graders would be the only students attending school for the whole day, and then the first day of school for everyone else would be the next.
Gotcha, thank you.
An unintended benefit was also transportation. Went so much better this year, having that gradual start.
Connie had another question. The Wednesdays that you were talking about that were professional development days for teachers, and then we had e-learning for the students.
Yes.
I'm assuming, I don't know, but I'm assuming that, well, of course, teachers are going to be busy that day. The structure of that day is going to be, are they going to leave lessons online for students? They won't be available to students, right?
That's absolutely correct. So the teachers would have something prepared prior for students, whether it's a catch-up day or whether it's an extension of a lesson, but they'll have something prepared prior to that Wednesday, and then that Wednesday will be very structured professional development and collaboration time for teachers.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions of Connie about the proposed calendar for the 2021-2022 school year? Again, there's lots of assumptions out there, all of them directly related to COVID, directly related to what's happening. All right, I will look for a motion to approve the 2021-2022 district calendar.
So moved.
Motion by Scott, and I have a second by
Judy.
by Judy. Any further discussion or questions? All those in favor with aye?
Aye.
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 Any opposed with nay? That motion is approved. We will move into item B, which is the Point of Discovery School expansion.
You'll recall last year, the PODS board moved forward to and requested an increase of 10th grade programming. The board approved that, so this year we are in a 6-10 model. There was also a number of 120 that was attached to that, and we were going to, if you recall, evaluate that this past fall. Well, obviously COVID hit, and it hit actually last spring, right at the time that PODS was going to go out and do their educational piece as it relates to what PODS has to offer our student body. We have 111 students. Of course, that's really not the point I'm trying to make right now. That was without any efforts because we couldn't. So we're in a unique situation right now because we can't evaluate PODS and we can't evaluate the numbers based on the obvious. There is a request for 11th grade, and I support that right now, that we move forward and accept the 11th grade programming, and quite frankly, bring this back forward with 140 students as the target, and bring this forward again next fall to take a look at what our numbers look like. We simply can't do any type of evaluation based on how COVID affected everything. And in all fairness to the students that are in that program, I certainly support moving forward with 11th grade. Anything to add, Connie, and or I know Jen Zock I can see is up there now too.
I'll just mention a couple things. One of the things that we learned, and I think we should be so proud of as a district, is the number of educational options we offered to families this fall based on their comfort level with COVID. So we had blended learning. We had some students completely online. We had some students that were flex learners. We expanded our online learning center. So we offered a lot of educational options, and that was very, very positively received in our community from our parents. So I think now is a time more than ever when I believe we need to continue educational options. PODS is a unique experience that parents want to stay with, and we want our families to stay in our community. The only other thing I'll mention is that should the board approve the expansion to grade 11 we would qualify to apply for the expansion grant from the DPI, which again is just nice additional support for financial support for the school.
Any board members have questions of Connie or Jen or Craig with respect? What we're really looking at is we had kind of put a pilot project together last year, and we had some parameters that we were looking to assess, and COVID just hasn't created the ability for us to do that. We're looking for an additional pilot project this year to include 11th grade, with the board then to assess that. We've increased the minimum amount of students from 120 to 140, again, to encourage and ensure that that there's an effort to inform and make parents and students aware of this great opportunity in the district if that works for them and their students.
Well, I had a question as far as enrollment. Seeing as how the target was 120 and we had 111 this year, obviously due to COVID, do we want to revise the number for next year, or are we going to leave it at 140?
Revise it in terms of up or down?
I don't know. That's
Meg and I had talked about that. I talked with Connie about that the reasoning behind that. Our target this year was 120, and we're going to increase it by a grade, which you can argue would be 140. But again, G, it's a target. That's what we're shooting for right now. Much like going into this year when we said, it didn't say the term target, it said enrollment of 120. Well, if school started, and we had this conversation last spring, if it was 117, what are we going to do after school starts? We aren't going to shut the program down. Our target is 140. That'll be used as an evaluation tool next fall. If we have 137, that's going to tell us something. If we have 115, that's going to tell us something else. It's a target. So I don't know if it really makes a whole lot of sense to concentrate on that specific number right now.
I would say an increasing enrollment would be a good target also, as long as it keeps increasing. But I had another question. As they're moving into 10th, 11th, and 12th grade, obviously the classrooms at former Jackson Elementary, or elementary classrooms, a lot of hardware needs to be used or made or put in for, say, I'm looking at biology lab classes or physics, chemistry lab classes, and how does the cost, I mean, are we putting that in? Are we remodeling those classrooms? How is that happening?
That's one of the great things about getting a grant. So grant dollars for an expansion grant, G, would be specifically used for things like that.
So they're being bought new and being installed? Like I'm talking like sinks, gas, things like that, just the general hardware used in teaching, and then some of the other stuff, that teachers use in classrooms, are they being like shuttled back and forth from SPASH to pods, or are they being bought with this money for pods?
Dan, do you want to jump in with as the example for biology this year, which is what the 10th grade course is?
Sure. So our students are going to be having similar types of experiences as students in SPASH, but that doesn't mean they're going to have the exact same types of experiences. And so our students this year are taking biology. It just looks a little bit different in terms of their activities and the things that they do. So I guess if I was going to answer your question, G, from like a 30,000 foot perspective, I would say that our students are going to have access to chemistry and physics just as the students at SPASH do. It will just be in a different way, and there will be times, yes, when we probably will have to collaborate with folks at SPASH to maybe use some of their facilities for things that maybe our students wouldn't have access to at our facility. We have some 10th graders right now who are taking classes at SPASH too, so if that is something, you know, a really lab-intensive class is something that's very important to them and the direction that they want to go with their education, that opportunity will be available to them. I don't think we're going to be overhauling classrooms and adding sinks and things like that, doing huge hardcore overhauls of the classroom. So our students, we're just going to be very, very creative in delivering those opportunities for our students and what those classes will look like for them.
Well, the things I'm concerned about are safety equipment, number one, to make sure that we have things like safety showers, eye washes in the correct place, in the correct number, things like that. But also, the secondary concern would be that the students at pods get the same benefit. They get the benefit of the small school atmosphere, but they should also get the benefit of everything our school district has to offer.
Agreed.
And obviously that means we can afford some more hardware, equipment, infrastructure that maybe a small school doesn't have. And that if you're doing a lab intensive course, say chemistry, for example, where you may be doing little 10, 15-minute labs from day to day, but they require a hood fan on correct ventilation, things like that. I would want to see at least one room at Jackson, formerly Jackson Elementary, that would be completely outfitted to handle those. For one thing, I don't think shuttling students back and forth from SPASH to pods, while it may be a temporary fix, in the long run, I think you want to have your own rooms to take full advantage of the small school atmosphere. Otherwise, if you're going to shuttle kids back and forth, you know, what's the point? And obviously, that's going to cost a lot of money. Now, I don't know what this grant is, but how much this grant is, but I would, as you move to having a 12th grade there, I would say we need to talk about spending money to put the correct safety stuff in so that your students at pods can perform the lab intensive courses there that you really want.
The grant monies available, G, are substantial, I will say that. We feel very comfortable that we will be eligible for some of those dollars. When it comes to infrastructure, I agree with you. I think to some extent we got to put a little bit more time in to determine, when you talk about 12th grade, you know, what is the end game and what is pods going to look like? And of course, we have to go through an evaluation period. We got to be a little bit cautious that we spend, we manage our money appropriately in terms of infrastructure additions to pods, not necessarily knowing as we sit here today what is the end game. So, but I agree, if we are going to eventually have a 12th grade there as well, we've got to have the the space that's appropriate for all subjects, and of course, upper level high school science brings into account a number of issues.
Are we having teachers with those specialty certifications? Are they moving from SPASH to pods for, say, 1 or 2 hours a day and then back? Is that what we're going to be doing?
No, we are keeping with our core teachers who are secondary certified. They also have a charter school license attachment granted by the Department of Public Instruction that allows them to teach those kinds of subjects within a charter school.
I also
they're highly capable staff.
I also do want to note that we, and G, I understand what you're saying with respect to transportation of students from pods to SPASH, but we've had that for quite some time. with our students, whether it's from Ben to SPASH or PJs to SPASH or SPASH to the university or SPASH to MSTC. I mean, the bottom line is that we can't reproduce everything in every location. And that's one of the huge benefits that we as a district, I believe, have, that we have such incredible educational resources in this community. And SPASH has been pretty creative in figuring out how to support students in accessing those in locations other than their regular school building. And, you know, that's something that we talked about with when we added on the pilot project for 10th grade last year, that there was the potential, whether it was in some of the lab classes or some of the language classes or some of the tech ed classes, that POD students would be able to access those, but they weren't going to be able to access them at PODs. They were going to be able to access them at SPASH or at MSTC or at the university, just like our SPASH students.
So that, you know, I apologize because I was not in those conversations.
Right.
So the end goal eventually is to have a PODS 6 through 12 where students can move back and forth between the various sources that you mentioned, SPASH, Mid-State, the university, for different things, and maybe not offer the full curriculum at PODS? Is that the end goal?
Likely. You know, we haven't had an in-depth conversation with that. We probably would have had that conversation this past fall if COVID didn't hit. I guess at the end of the day, maybe this is just reiterating what Meg said. We're fortunate in that we are a large district and we are able to provide several resources and programs for our students. We need to continue down that journey as it relates to all of our programs, specifically in this case, PODS. I also believe what we've seen with COVID is going to require us in the future to continue exploring what type of alternatives we have for our student body. I think we're going to continue to see an interest of parents and students for alternatives, but specifically alternatives that are, quite frankly, smaller in nature. I'm very concerned about the students that are still 100% virtual going into the second semester, what those students and parents' expectations are going to be next fall. Because we're not going to be out of the woods next fall. We're still going to be dealing with issues with vaccinations as it relates to staff. Maybe students, I'm not sure, but we're going to likely start the school year with some type of need for continued alternative programming as it relates to virtual. So I think options are good. But there's a lot of detail, Gene, in terms of what you just stated as it relates to the end game, I think, going through 12th grade. There's a lot more to come as it relates to conversation. And I think to your point, what exactly is that going to look like, specifically in the area of science?
That would be a very important conversation to have because as PODS grows, you want to know what it's going to look like when it's fully developed and functioning. And like you said, we missed out on that with COVID, but that's certainly going to be something we should discuss.
Barb?
I think that we need to discuss now, if we're going to go to 12th grade, it's not fair to kids to say, come to PODS for 11th grade, but you might have to graduate from SPASH. I think we should, I would be for continuing to 11th grade this year and 12th next year and committing to it now so that these kids aren't lost in space.
Can I ask a question?
Chris?
Dan, can you tell us what the breakdown is as far as the numbers in each grade level? Do you have that?
I don't have it off the top of my head. I know that our split right now, we have half of our students coming Monday, Tuesday, and that's 6th through 8th graders. And the other half come Thursday, Friday, that's our 9th and 10th graders. So our 9th and 10th grade are bigger groups overall than our middle school grades.
Okay. And how many new students at the younger grade levels are coming in? If I had my student there in like 8th, 9th, 10th, I would definitely want an 11th grade. But our new students, you know, how is that number coming in?
Well, this year, that number was very different because of COVID. It was
Right,
much smaller
right.
than usual. In previous years, it's usually around 30 to 35 in the younger kid grades that are new, kind of in that middle school, like 6th, 7th grade new students.
In comparison to what for the other grades?
In terms of new students that come
Yes.
on a given year, it's probably twice to 3 times as many in favor of the younger students to older students.
I guess a question would be for 11th grade. A little bit of what G was saying, you know, if we don't know we're going to approve the model that goes on, you know, how much of an investment do we want to make in pods? If we don't know that the numbers are, you know, what happens, you know, and again, who knows with COVID and with, you know, we don't know those numbers and we can only, you know, move forward in the way we think we should. But how much of an investment will we make for 11th grade if we don't know that's something that's even going to be
Well, there
viable?
certainly are things that we will do in terms of science specifically as it relates to the safety issues, the
Sure,
eyewashes,
right,
for
right,
example. But that's minimum.
I guess I mean
I-
like structural.
I understand what you say, but what you're saying, but I just think it needs to have a more robust conversation, which we started to get into at cabinet over the last couple of weeks, and then we thought, because of the nature of COVID and where we're at right now, we were supposed to have an evaluation last spring.
Right.
And we are limited for our capacity on a number of things, and this
Right.
be one of them. A decision has to be made, because right now we're starting to enroll students at pods as well as SPASH. We gotta know
Right.
what we're doing next year right
Sure.
now.
Okay.
So we don't have a lot of time to put into this.
Right.
However, and without getting too far down the road as it relates to what you also talked to, G, in terms of having the students at pods have I don't know what term you used, if it was exact or identical or the same experience as SPASH. They're not going to.
No.
It's not intended to.
Right.
Now,
I said an equal experience.
Yeah.
We don't want to sacrifice the rigor, okay?
I agree with all that.
When they're there. But you know, in the interest, as you said, having a robust conversation, that didn't happen this year, and it probably, you know, we need to have a robust conversation. I want to make it clear, I'm all for pods. I want to see it last. I want to see the foundation set for it to last, not for it to peter out. So if we want to set the foundation for it to last and be robust, then I think we need to address, how are you going to teach high school courses in an elementary school? And it takes money to change that. And I think we can't discuss that now. It's just too lengthy, and it needs to be a subject-specific conversation. But that should come sometime, I would think, this spring, you know, if we can get together on that.
So that would be the plan, and that's why right now we are proposing, again, just basically adding an additional pilot project. Because ultimately, any alternative education is only going to work if there are students that want to be part of that program. And if it's economically justifiable for the district. that was the conversation that we had a year ago about expansion to 10th grade. And we have not had the ability, and PODS did not have the ability to really market and work to grow their option in light of what was happening in COVID. And so what we're asking the board is to let's move on for another year. And because the concept of expeditionary learning is incredible, but it's only going to survive in the long run in this district if students and families embrace it and want to be a part of it. And right now, in my belief, the enrollment is it's just not. We need more robust enrollment, but PODS has not been able to do that this past year. And Dan, I think as you pointed out, you know, this was not the year for you to be able to add new students because of what was happening with PODS and online learning and everything else. So we're asking the board tonight to recommend 11th grade programming at PODS through an extended memorandum of understanding for next year, with the idea of taking that broader look at how we can better both market and encourage students who would benefit from expeditionary learning to consider PODS moving forward. And not those, in my mind, not those who are now in 10th or 11th, or 10th wanting to go to 11th, but those who are in 6th wanting to go to 7th, or 7th wanting to go to 8th, at those younger grades, to build the school from below versus just retaining those students that we already have. Barb?
What are the PODS staff members going to tell kids? Let's say I've got a 10th grader at SPASH right now, and I'm thinking about sending them to PODS, and they say, well, can they graduate from PODS? That's a big marketing tool to be able to say, yes, they can go here 11th grade and 12th grade. I think that would improve your numbers, give you a little bit more strength, if you will. I really would like to see us go for 2 years.
Barb, I think what we would say to students is that we've had incredible support right now as we've looked at grade expansion, but we also have to meet our enrollment numbers and meet the contract that we have with the school board. So while we can't make promises, should our enrollment continue to grow, we have seen now support for the school board as long as we're meeting kind of those requirements that are very reasonable. That's what I would tell students. I can't promise them. I wish I could, but I think right now we would just say we're continuing to work really hard to build our enrollment, to offer quality project-based education. And we feel that if we meet those conditions that we need to meet based on our contract, that the board will support us through 12th grade. And again, can't promise, but that's how I would answer that.
It's real similar, Barb, to the conversation we had last year when we opened it up to 10th grade. Well, are we going to start at PODS but then have to go back to SPASH? I think to some degree there's probably some blind faith from those that are involved with PODS in terms of parents feeling that this may happen, or they're hoping that happens. I appreciate what you're saying, Barb, and understand what you're saying. That said, based on where we're at with COVID and our inability to put forth the amount of time and energy to really have a robust discussion 2 months ago, my thought was let's get 11th grade on the table and move forward. Otherwise, decisions have come very difficult in my tenure here as it relates to PODS, and I'd like to simply just move on and then take the next step. Because when we start taking a look at 12th grade, in that conversation, now I'm not saying one way or another what happens, but in that conversation, 6th grade is going to come up too. And so I think we really got to take a look at more than just graduating from PODS in terms of what that might look like as it relates to 6th grade as well as a curriculum as G talked about.
Craig, is this conversation every year? I mean, do we have a real hard conversation about, expanding the grade level?
It expanded, it was originally 6 through 9.
So the original concept was 6 through 9. And so last year was the first year that the question became, can we add 10? And, part of this is, again, having that look at, what do we as a district want pods to look? I mean, do we want district pods to be 7 through 10, 7 through 11, 7 through 12, 9 through 12? I mean, those are those deep questions we have to ask, but the underlying concern is just students have to want to go. Students and parents want to have their kids do that, and from a district perspective, in the long run, we've got to determine whether it's viable for us to continue to provide this option, and that's going to be determined by whether students and parents want the option, as it has with every other charter school that this district has ever provided. So,
Can I just make a comment? Barb, I totally understand what you're saying, and if I had a student, I would absolutely want that type of security in knowing. Can you hear me okay? Barb, can you hear me okay? No? She can't hear.
No,
Okay.
it's very muffled to me.
Okay.
but-
I guess I would say, Barb, can you hear now any better? Any more? Any better? Is this any better? Nope. Anyway, I guess what I would say to Barb is, I understand how she feels, but the bottom line is, the numbers are going to tell us if we're even able to do 12th, 11th and 12th and continue. That's just the bottom line. If people want to be in the school and they start signing up, or the numbers, get to a place where, we can see, you're going to graduate from this school, but if the numbers don't show up, we may not be able to continue at all. So I understand what you're saying, but are we ready for a motion, or?
any other questions or comments?
I would just ask then that this discussion that was put off due to COVID, that happen when it's feasible, as soon as we can, sooner the better.
Yep, agreed, Jay.
Okay, so the recommendation is to recommend offering 11th grade programming at PODS through an extended memorandum of understanding for the 2021-2022 school year.
I'll make that a motion if exactly what you said.
Motion by Wade, do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Scott. Any further discussion? All those in favor with aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed with nay. The motion passes. Thank you. Moving into item 10, which is an annual item, it's the open enrollment space determination for the 2021-2022 school year.
Note that the packet said 2021, and it's 21-22. In the motion, it's correct in the motion, but there was a typo there. Thank you.
Good evening again. This is, like Meg said, an annual notice. We do this every January that provides us slots for students in community to our district, both for regular ed and for special ed. We use special ed caseload factors to determine this, as well as projections, something we closely monitor throughout the school year, especially around this time and moving forward. We use DPI's factor analysis, which takes a look at each individual student, their IEP, the amount of services and supports that are put into place, the amount of time spent within special ed, and then that is given a weight, and then we look at that as compares comparison to not only our teaching staff, but our support staff as well. And we do a couple of different cross analysis that look at that just to make sure that we're analyzing that appropriately. Over the time that I've been here, we've started to see an increase in special ed services and students, both from our local community, but also from our surrounding areas enrolling into our district. Because once we accepted the students into our district, then they stay with us throughout their time here, and so we don't reassess that open enrollment. Once they're here 1 year, we grandfather them in the following year, and so our numbers continue. So in this motion, we are providing unlimited general education seats for 4K, as well as general education non-resident seats throughout our K-12 programming. The difference this year for our special ed placements is that we will continue to have 5 slots for open enrollment special ed in our pre-K area, early childhood, but we are now from K-12 going to have 0 slots available for open enrollment for students with disabilities. Except for our PODS program, we will allow 1 spot open and then 3 for our PODS or our Project Search program for the next school year. This is going to keep or at least anticipate our numbers to stay where they're at, minus those that are currently with us. That's kind of what we're looking at this year. And so I would entertain questions on how we kind of come up to this spot or any other things that have come up.
Do we need, oh, sorry, go ahead, G.
Caleb, I see a lot of zeros.
Yes.
That means no, we can't accept any more kids in those areas?
Yeah, and that's special ed specific, G. Not for our regular ed programming. This is specifically for any student that is outside of our attendance zone that currently has an IED. In the grades kindergarten through 12th grade, we are going to deny that to come in. We want to maintain appropriate services, maintain the students that we currently have, and with our projections into next year, we're also trying to ensure that we are able to provide the services for those that are here.
What about regular ed?
Unlimited seats for regular ed.
Any other questions of Caleb? So we're looking for 2 separate motions. The first motion would be to approve unlimited general education 4K seats and unlimited general education non-resident seats available under open enrollment for the 2021-2022 school year. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Scott. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Ranow.
Judy.
Judy, yeah. Any discussion or questions about that motion? All those in favor with aye?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed with nay? The second motion would be to approve 5 multi-categorical, all disability areas, special education seats available for students in early childhood, 0 multi-categorical, all disability areas, special education seats available for students in grade K through 12, 1 multi-categorical, all disability areas for PODS, and 3 multi-categorical, all disability areas for Project Search available for the 2021-2022 school year. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Jeff Ebel. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by, was that G?
Yeah.
Second by G. All those in favor with aye? Aye. Opposed? So I do want to note that, in this time of COVID, while we're all on like Zoom calls and things, it's always fun to see backgrounds. And Caleb, I love the sleeping dog in the background on your couch.
She hasn't moved.
She hasn't. Anyway, I just wanted to point that out.
That's
We are
great.
clearly, you know,
Very
boring enough to have her sit through the whole meeting.
Enjoying the competition.
All right, all right. Thank you very much. We'll move into item 13, which is general, and that is appointment of a board member. With Trish's resignation, we will be looking to create an appointment for a board member. Under Wisconsin law, that person will serve for 1 year. They would be on the board through into April of 2022 and then would have to run. Carlin has created a proposed timeline of applications made available to the public tomorrow. Deadline for applications about 2 weeks later on the 27th of January, that we would hold a special board meeting on the 1st to interview those candidates. It would likely be what we're doing right now, which would be a Zoom meeting. I mean, it'll be a WebEx meeting, board members and candidates. We'd be asking candidates to appear via WebEx due to the smallness of the room. And then we would have the candidates seated at the regular school board meeting on February 8th. The process that we've used the last couple of years is with the application materials, board members are asked to answer a few questions on the written application, and all those will be provided. Any appointment or any people seeking appointment, we would provide those answers to board members prior to the interview. We also will provide any applicants with, I believe it's about 4 questions prior to that meeting. So all applicants will receive the questions that we'll be asking them at that meeting where we're interviewing them before that meeting. And then we would ask them in order, sort of like we've done with, like the League of Women Voters does with their forums. So, we would have one person answer the first question first and then work through the group and then have the next person answer the second question. That's how we've done it for the appointments since I've been on the board. Are there any questions or concerns about using that format for this appointment? Or any questions about that? The one other thing I want to note for board members is, depending on the number of people we have who are going to put forward an application, there is if we have a large number of applicants, then we will clearly need to reserve a couple of hours for the process. If we have a smaller number of applicants, there is the potential that we're going to be asking the board if they would be willing to have us add to that special board meeting an hour-long seminar with Lindsay Bernhagen. She is the UWSP professor that has been providing the professional development for all of our staff with respect to cultural inclusiveness. Our Bliss staff just went through that this past week. It's an hour-long training, and Craig has highly recommended that we as a board go through that training as well. And so there's the potential that we would add that on to that special board meeting if it looks like, that meeting wouldn't be too long for board members.
In the past, since I've been here, our appointments, the interviews have been around an hour.
Yep.
And if that's the case, and that was with a handful of candidates. If that's the case, I'd like to add an additional hour. Again, Lindsay Bernhagen from UWSP is just finishing up one of a 4-part series with our staff related to equity, inclusion, and diversity. And she's doing a great job, and I thought, my goodness gracious, we should have our board in that same training as well. If that doesn't work and there's too many candidates, we'll then schedule that at a later date. But that's 4 sessions, 4 one-hour sessions, which will then occur the remainder of this year, and then next year, actually Lindsay's starting to schedule each school building now for the second set this spring.
Do board members have any questions about that? Okay, so what we'd be looking for is a motion to move forward with the process of filling a vacancy on the school board created by the January 2nd, 2021 resignation of Ms. Patricia Baker with the proposed timeline as recommended. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Ebel. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Wade. Is there any further discussion? We will be sending out to all board members prior to the interview, the questions that we'll be asking of applicants and seeking input from board members as to whether they would have any recommendations or changes they'd like to see to those questions. We've been asking the same ones for the last 3 or 4 years, but we'll be seeking your input on that prior to the meeting on the 1st of February. So we have a motion on the floor. All those in favor with aye?
Aye.
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 Any opposed with nay? Motion is carried. Moving into item 2021, WASB resolutions. I'm going to turn that over to Craig.
Yeah, I reviewed these, cabinet members reviewed these. One comment, and that would be on the first one, and this was after talking with Tom, so Tom, if you're there, you want to chime in. That's the 1% sales tax. I've been advocating that for some time. Yet Tom brought up an interesting point, and after reading this, there's just not great detail here. If a sales tax gets embedded into statute, legislators change, what could happen to that 1% down the road, or the ability to levy it or not levy it, the ability to utilize that, and I'm just concerned about that. And as I read this, there's not a lot of detail in terms of, is this annual? You know, it does indicate that it's in effect as long as it takes to borrow, but if you're gonna borrow that money for how long, and there's some questions there. Versus if there's an intent to assist school districts, an increase to our ability to increase a mill rate is directly impacts us, and we're in control of that mill rate. So I appreciate the interest to assist school districts, specifically in the area of technology and facilities and whatnot, but there's a lot of questions regarding that, and I'm certainly not, I don't want to poo-poo the ability to.
Would you like me to comment on the?
Yes, please.
On the first item? Well, I think the intention of the people who wrote this up, or the WSP to propose this, is obviously well-intentioned and honorable, but I guess the truth of the matter is history has shown that if you provide a state government with a new tax, it's surely never to be undone. And it will remain probably in perpetuity. Now, that sounds good if you think they're gonna honor that it stays for the school purposes it was originally intended. But legislators change, circumstances change, and I have all the confidence in saying that the probability is that this would morph and that the amount of money would either be eroded or would eventually disappear to another purpose. And of course, the legislature makes the law, so if they adopt a tax, sales tax, they can certainly change the purpose of that sales tax during any legislative session. I think a better way to go about this to help school districts would be to alter this resolution, alter it in such a way that it would give the local school board the authority to increase the levy rate up to a certain amount. I'll make up 10 cents, for example. So the local boards within the state would have the authority to levy an additional 5 cents or 4 cents or 8 or 10 cents in order to do these works or to borrow money and use that money to pay off principal and interest. If that's done, it stands a much greater chance of remaining in the statute for that purpose. Now, of course, the legislature still makes the law, so they can increase or decrease that amount in the future. They can eliminate that in the future, etc. But it is a little bit more difficult for them to do that, and it is far more difficult for them to take that and turn that into a sales tax. But it is quite easy for them to take something that's already a sales tax, shaved for one purpose, and perhaps move that into a general sales tax or some other purpose. That was my thought on that. I personally do not support this at all the way it's written, but I would support something where it would give school boards authority to raise some additional funds.
Does anybody else have any comments or questions about that?
That's really the only question I have regarding the resolutions. These resolutions come forward each and every year for those that might not be familiar with this process. These are resolutions that move forward from a committee because they believe they're of interest to school boards and the people, not because that committee specifically supports them. Years ago, there were dozens of these at each delegate assembly.
Yeah, usually 24 to 30.
I mean, pages of these. So these have been reduced significantly over time. So, Ann will actually represent the school district at the school board convention next week. And then there's discussion regarding these. There may or may not be a vote on this particular, or on any of these, but typically there's a vote. There oftentimes are amendments made. I guess really that's all I have to say. I don't know if I'm highly convinced that that laws change to any great extent based on this process, but it certainly is the process that is put into place to hear from the members of WASB.
I have a couple of questions. Are we being asked to vote on whether we support these, and that will be reported to WASB in general, or are we asked to vote on whether we support each individual one? And then, what is the history of these resolutions? Because to me, it looks like anything involving money is, in the current climate, is a foregone conclusion.
So G, these are these resolutions that are voted on. They basically focus and direct WASB in terms of their lobbying with state and federal legislature. And so what we've done as a school board is we have, voted, we have given our recommendation as a board, so then our delegate, who this year will be Ann, then goes and votes on our behalf. And all the districts in the state then have a delegate at the statewide convention, and everybody gets a vote. So as a board, we voted to inform our delegates so they know how to vote when they're at the state convention.
And we vote on them in mass or individually?
Well, we've voted on them in the past. If there's one, if there's one that we, don't want to approve, we'll pull that one out and vote on that. We can vote on that separate, and then we can vote on the others. So, typically the board has been in support of most of them. And the reality too is the delegate goes down there, and if there's discussion and amendments are made at the meeting, which they often are, then our delegate makes the best decision they can based on the conversation we've had up here, basically beforehand.
Then my previous question was, what's the history of these resolutions? I mean, do they just, do legislatures actually act upon them or consider them?
Well, again, as Meg stated earlier, the information is used for the leadership at WASB to include their lobbying efforts through Dan Rossmiller to go in the Capitol and promote these ideas and concepts with the legislators. I believe it does have some influence in terms of legislators thinking how this could be incorporated into what we're currently doing. Has it increased school revenues? No, I don't believe it really has. When we talk about the issue of the sales tax, we can spend all night talking about it. Quite frankly, in my opinion, it's not going to fly right now anyway. But we don't know that. So I don't know, Meg. You sat on the committee for a number of years to determine what is actually brought forward.
They're definitely, what I can tell you, not necessarily with, this year it's predominantly financial stuff in here. Other years there's been other substantive stuff there that actually has made a difference in the legislature and has led to changes in law. But again, that depends on the legislature and where they want to go. I guess I would agree with Tom with respect to number one. The one concern that I would have with that is a sales tax is a more speculative funding mechanism in my mind than property tax. And sometimes what happens is if you pass something like this, then the legislature goes in and just decreases your funding in another way. So I'm always kind of concerned that something like this might wind up providing us with more speculative revenue than what our current system is doing, because I think the legislature would say, okay, we'll give you the sales tax, but now we're going to take away some of your, the revenue sharing. So I'm a little uncomfortable with it.
Thank you.
Do any other board members have any questions about them? I guess in light of the conversation, if there aren't any questions about the others, I guess I'd be looking for a motion to instruct Ann to vote no on the resolution 21-01 and vote yes on the remainder. as our delegate to the convention this next week.
Well, I don't know about voting no on the first one. We've only heard from Tom, and you mentioned that you don't favor it.
No, I guess I'm asking, where do other board members stand?
My personal opinion, if Tom and the superintendent are looking at the possibility of it doing more damage than good, I would not want to support it at all.
You know, I think there's a good chance with this, it'll be amended
Yeah.
to such a degree that it may be better to say no to it.
Right.
Because if you say yes, you're going to have a really struggle with all the amendments that get thrown in.
I would,
Can I correct something? What was just said, I didn't mean to imply that this would be worse than nothing. But what I meant to imply by this is that if we support this as a sales tax, I think the probability is in the not too distant future, it will become something else.
Right.
It might help, it might do something in the short term, but in the long term, it probably was going to be altered, if not completely changed. My point was that if we could do an amendment and offer to have the WSB change this to offering some authority to school boards of, say, up to some cent amount in a levy, that would make more sense. You folks do what you think, is best, but that was my point. I mean, certainly more money is going to help, but I just don't think in the long term the sales tax is going to provide that. It's going to be eaten up and used for other purposes than education.
Mike, can I just make a comment? And one of the things, Tom, because we don't support this, there are many other districts who may bring this forward and support it. And as Mike said, this will be looked at, it could be changed. This is not, just because we say this is not something, we don't think this is ideal. I just think that if you've ever been to the delegate assembly, I mean, they're going to be people who want this to happen, and there are going to be people who want to change it and amend it and that. So I don't think it's doing us any damage by saying we don't think this is the right solution. It has potential to not being the right solution.
Well, how would you go about if Tom's suggestion, just off the cuff of, having, giving school districts the ability to levy a 10% or 10-cent increase in their levy, how would you go about introducing that?
we could have Ann, we could have Ann during the assembly request an amendment to state that the increase reflect authority for the school board to increase the tax levy, just as simple as that.
Right.
Because when you start talking about 10 cents, 5 cents,
Right.
that will all be challenged and amended 1,000 times. And as we sit here tonight, I'm not even sure what number I'd even recommend. So you could keep the number out. We could simply ask Ann to make a motion to focus on increased authority for the levy versus the sales tax. Somebody else might do that as well. But so we're not saying, no, we're not interested in an additional funding, because we are, but we think there's a better way to do it. And Ann could do that, and Tom and I could have Tom write something up for Ann, and Ann could just read that off next week.
I think that would be a great idea. That was going to be my next suggestion. That's great.
Yeah, I would be for doing that in lieu of voting on the 1% tax increase. But I do think, one or the other, but should have something, to offer.
Okay, so then are we looking at a motion to have Ann make an amendment request with respect to the first item and then to support the remainder?
Sounds good.
Do I have someone who would make that motion?
Sure, I'll make that motion.
Jeff Ebel made the motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Scott. Any further discussion or questions?
And just one thing about one of the other resolutions, the one about getting rid of the impediments to hiring retired teachers to come back, making it easier. My feeling on that is that that's kind of a too easy way out. We had a shortage of teachers before COVID, and that really isn't going to do anything. We all know the way to get more teachers, and it isn't just go back and get retired teachers to come out of retirement. It's to induce young people to come to education. And of course that requires money. And that's what I would say about that resolution.
Don't make me ask him a question.
Any further comments or discussion? We have a motion and a second on the floor. All those in favor with aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed with nay? That motion passes. Item C are the meeting dates, times, and locations. We will now be having a special board meeting on February 1st. And then we will be having our regular board meeting on February 8th. I am now asking for a motion to go into closed session under Wisconsin Statute 19.85, paren 1, paren C, considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility, specifically review of administrative contracts, including the contract of the superintendent. Do I have a motion? I've got a motion by Ebel. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Wade. Any discussion or objections? I will have Carlin call the roll.
Mr. Pope,
Yes.
Ms. Va,
Yes.
Ms. Scott,
Yes.
Ms. Portson,
Yes.
Ms. Rano, Mr. Ebel,
Yes.
Mr. Wade,
Yes.
Ms. Erler.
Yes.
Motion passes 8-0.
All right, thank you. We will ask you guys to sign off of this call and then